a lot of them that are fresh off the boat, they get a huge culture shock. And for them, you normally find out not long after they decide to go back.
Yeah.
You have to come here with an open mind and
Yeah.
understand that you also have to adapt day to day on the laws and the cultures that they have.
Well, hello. First off, why don't you tell me who you are and what it is you do?
My name is Thomas Kraus, and I am German-Taiwanese. My dad's German, my mom's Taiwanese, and I grew up in Thailand and Phuket, basically. But then the last, 10 years, I came back to Phuket, and now my wife and I, we run and operate a free-range chicken farm.
Oh, wow. And where is that?
It's in Koh Yao Noi in Phang. So it's about a 30-minute speedboat ride from Phuket.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. And so how long have you been here? Where were you before?
So all in Thailand, I've been here about 15 years. And prior coming back to Thailand, I was actually in Hong Kong. And prior to that, in Europe and around, actually.
And what were you doing back then?
So I was in Hong Kong. I was actually working in luxury. So my background is actually in watches and jewellery.
Okay.
And I studied that in Switzerland. And then, from finishing my course, I decided to come back to Asia because most of my family, they're all based here in Asia. So then, okay, Hong Kong's the next closest part.
Okay. So, I mean, what was the trigger for you to move to Phuket in particular? Was there an event or something that happened, or is it just something that has evolved?
Yeah. Why I came back was basically because my dad was seriously ill, and he passed in 2011, and that was actually the main kicker for me to come back to Asia. And Thailand was because we have a lot of family roots here. So then that's why I thought, okay, Thailand's probably the easiest place to settle, and it's also closest to my direct relatives. My oldest brother is living in Bangkok, and my mom's in Taiwan, so I'm kind of here in the middle.
So just remind me again, what's your background? You're German?
German-Taiwanese.
Taiwanese?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll have the same problem as any other expat coming to Thailand, that you've got no rights to be here. There are no ASEAN rights or anything like that?
No, exactly. So I'm considered a standard expat.
Okay, so that's interesting. Can you tell me, when you first arrived here in Phuket, what were your first impressions? Were you obviously, with your background, well acquainted with Asia, or was there a culture shock?
No, so I am German by passport. That's normally what I say, but my roots and everything, because of Dad's work, we were mostly based out in Southeast Asia. So for me, it wasn't necessarily such a big transition because I did study here at the international school. So I was kind of acclimatized to Phuket. But obviously, as a student and as a normal citizen, it's a bit different of lifestyle.
Okay, so that must have been relatively straightforward for you because you're familiar with the area. But was there any, when you got here, any issues with expectations compared to reality? Were you expecting it to work one way and it worked a different way?
Yes, because like I said, I was studying here in an international school, but essentially being there, you're still kind of in your own bubble. So you don't really see what life is really like in Thailand. So actually back then, I mean, I say it was great. It was perfect. But then after leaving and seeing a bit more of the world and coming back, yes, there were certain culture shocks or just certain processes that takes time to get used to.
Any come to mind?
Yeah, mostly it's the official work that having to deal with officials and all this, it is tiresome and it takes a lot of patience.
And how do you go about that? Do you work through the bureaucracy yourself, or do you use agents?
We tried. So with my wife, particularly when we were setting up our company, we did try to do it on our own, but that gets extremely tiresome because you're getting information from the offices drip fed. So every time you go in, you start getting more information. So then you have to go back, gather that information and go back in. So just in terms of the efficiency and all that, it was a bit of a challenge to get used to because it's really almost an effort that you really have to be proactive in the whole process and stay on top of things. Because once you ignore it or you put it aside, you fall so far behind, and then it's a whole catch-up work again.
So that was with like setting up your business. So you
Yeah.
use an agent or an accountant to help you do it. And same with your visas. Any issues, or was it easy?
Visas is easier now because I'm married. My wife is Thai. So with that, she obviously helps me a lot. So doing the whole visa process and things now has gotten a lot easier because I have a marriage visa.
Well, before you're married, though, you must have been in the same situation as many.
Yeah, but when I first came back, I was working for a company.
I
So they managed that whole process for me, and that made life a lot easier. So actually leaving that company was the first time I really had to deal with all that on my own. And that was the first time I decided to start trying to do my own business
Okay,
around
so
here.
when you moved from Hong Kong to here, you were employed by a company here already in Thailand.
Exactly.
Oh, your transition must have been relatively straightforward then.
Yes, that
Okay, I
helped. It was a soft landing.
Okay, good. So what's your day-to-day look like? What's your average day like?
So now, since we have a free range farm that's in Koh Yao, basically my day to day is get up, collect your egg, sort the eggs out, and deliver it to each points that we have. So right now, my day to day is just around my business and making sure we get our products from A to B.
So, but how is your lifestyle? What's your work-life balance like?
Work-life balance is good. I mean, I'm not one to necessarily go out and socialize. So for me, the enjoyment and the work-life balance is going out and exploring the provinces around Phuket. So now, since I've married my wife who is from Phang Nga, I get more exposure towards Phang Nga. Then you travel a bit further to Surat Thani and all these areas. And that is it's a nice weekend getaway and a nice way to blow off steam because, like I said, I'm not one for the big social events. So that's kind of how I try to build my lifestyle more around nature and environment and just ingraining yourself in the local cultures.
So you're obviously well established here in Phuket now. So what's the main thing that's worked for you?
Main thing that's worked for us was persistence, man. It's persistence. At the end of the day, you have to have that drive to stay on top of things. And that is something that kind of keeps me going because it also keeps you on the day to day. Sorry, that was not a good answer.
No, that was a perfectly good answer. But it wasn't quite what I meant. What I meant was when I say what has worked for you is do you feel happier in yourself? Are you healthier? Are you living a nice lifestyle? Yeah,
Okay.
that's what's worked out well for you.
So what's worked for me as a whole was finding a purpose here because like I said, growing up, living in so many different places, I got to see a lot of things and experience a lot of things. But I guess that's what kind of led me back to Thailand was because moving so much, you kind of get lost, I felt like. So I never really had a place that I could call home. So Thailand being the place where I lived the longest, I would say it's closest to where I can call home. So that is a nice basis where I can kind of find my purpose.
So what do you think that Thailand and Phuket in particular gives you or allows you to do? Is it the way the bureaucracy works, gives you certain freedoms, or
It's the opportunities. It's the opportunities. So I see if you're trying to do a lot of grassroots things, which is what I'm trying to do with our farm, when you start looking at those kinds of opportunities here in Thailand and Phuket in particular, you actually have an abundance of options. And that's why I say is something that I find so exciting about Phuket is because it's almost a blank slate. You just have to go out and do a bit of research, understand the area and the opportunities you will be able to see.
That's interesting. So obviously I've got to ask you the flip side. What hasn't worked? What have been the major blockages or problems?
Language barriers. That's something that for me was a small regret that I didn't pay that much attention in school during the Thai class. Because what I'm realizing or what I know now, having Thai language opens up a lot of doors and it actually makes life a lot easier. So that was basically the hardest challenge. If my wife is not next to me, is just trying to sort things out on your own. Takes a bit longer.
So is that your major frustration, or?
Yes, yes. If I can say, if that's the hardest part, it's the language barrier, because once, if you could actually sort that language barrier out, I feel a lot of the pieces fall into place.
Okay. What's a piece of advice you'd give somebody who's thinking about coming to live here? What would you say they should do? The most important thing they should think?
Do your research and be flexible. At the end of the day, that is the beauty of Thailand and the beauty of Phuket, is that you don't know what comes tomorrow. So in that sense, if you're too set in your ways, you'll get extremely frustrated. So I say, when you come here, come with an open mind, be flexible, engage with the culture and the traditions. And once you get on that boat, like I said, everything really falls into place, and then you start feeling like you belong.
Yeah. So can you think of sort of people or sort of person that would suit your lifestyle? Well, because there's the flip side to it. Who doesn't fit in?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So who would fit in? I guess it is somebody who has experienced other cultures prior as well. Because from my experience, seeing from friends and just people trying to move here, a lot of them that are fresh off the boat, they get a huge culture shock. And for them, you normally find out not long after they decide to go back.
yeah.
And that's where it comes down to, like I said, if you've had some exposure, it doesn't matter where you are, but you've experienced different cultures, then you're a bit more exposed to that, and that makes the kind of transition here and a lot easier. So I would say, yeah, the right fit are for adventurers.
Where do you see yourself in 12 months or 5 years? I mean, the point of this question is, are you settled, or are you looking to move on?
For us, we're based here in Phuket. So I don't really have any plans to leave anywhere else, because the farm that we've set up, which is also something that I enjoy a lot, is basically, it's a legacy business. We have to be here. We have to be here. So for that, as well, the deeper purpose is that we also want to drive and push for the local communities to also start doing agriculture. So it's really a mission where we feel obliged we have to be here. I can't go anywhere.
So you got a
right now.
long-term plan to
Exactly.
expand and yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, so is there any piece of advice that you would give anybody that I haven't talked about?
Basically, as you would do, be vigilant, be aware of what's happening around you, but overall, as a whole, Thailand, Phuket is actually generally quite safe. So just as an example, you can actually, if you're at a busy area, you can almost leave your phone at the table, and you don't have to be afraid that someone will snatch it away from you. Let alone if you're at home, you can also basically leave your house door unlocked. Most of the time, we don't really lock our home door. So, I mean, that it might be negligent on our side if something does happen, but I mean, that's the safety that you kind of get around here. I mean, of course, nothing is perfect, but already just having that as a cultural point, it's something that I find is absolutely beneficial to this area, and also for people looking to come somewhere where it's somewhat safe.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, my experience when I was back in the UK was basically if it wasn't nailed down, it would be stolen or gone by the time I got back. And I found that extremely distressing. And then after that, I had a long time in Singapore, which was wonderful because it was so safe. But it was a little bit sterile and boring in many ways. But the security just took so much stress away from my life. And then you can come to somewhere like Phuket where you get the best of both worlds. It is relatively safe, it's relatively friendly, but it's much more colorful than a city-state like Singapore. What do you feel about that?
Yes, 100%. 100%. So that's why it goes back to the point that you have to be flexible because it's that colorful. So every day it's a new adventure. Yeah. Okay, so I think what you also have to watch out here is as well to understand that you are in Thailand. Because in the past, when I was working for a company, when I first moved here, they had a lot of staff, employees come from Germany coming here to Phuket to work for 3-4 month stints. And they come in thinking everything is same as it is in Germany. So what we experienced from the company side was many times the ones that came from Germany with a valid German license, they are the ones that mostly ended up in a car accident coming into Thailand. So, I mean, this is where I say you need to be flexible and a bit open-minded and adapt to the culture and the way of life here. So most of the time, what I try to tell them, even though it's not politically correct, was just to say, while driving on the road, you have to kind of adapt yourself to the driving skills here. Because what I feel like in Europe, for example, a lot of times what they try to teach you there is watch out for yourself. Make sure you follow the rules, everything, and you'll be fine. Whereas here, it's a bit more colorful. It's more of a anticipate what the other person is doing, not so much focus on yourself. And that's where I say you have to come here with an open mind and understand that you also have to adapt day to day on the laws and the cultures that they have here, because it's adaptable. It's nothing is black and white.
I hear you. The roads here are different. They do take getting used to. My partner, she's German, and she probably shares your tendency to say these are the rules, therefore that's what people are going to do. That's not the way it works here. The way it works is completely different, and it takes a while to try and figure it out. And even then, I'm still not 100% certain the way that it works. But in essence, if you're behind somebody, you're responsible for not hitting them. You know what I mean? So that's why you find people changing lane in front of you with no warning whatsoever, because they're simply in front of you, and therefore they're your problem. At least I'm not 100% certain, but this is my observation. So I'm beginning to think the way that it is. So you have to drive defensively, but also at the same time slightly aggressively. And this contradiction causes real problems, because if you sit there being passive, you won't make any progress. You'll be sat at a junction for half an hour because no one's going to let you out.
Exactly.
Do you think so?
Exactly. Exactly. So so that's where it is. You have to be creative. You have to be creative on the day to day, and that's what Thailand is. So also, can I put in another example?
Of course you can.
Culture? So as well, another thing that you also, in terms of culture, where you also have to be aware of in Thailand, they have a word called Grengjai.
Okay.
Which is basically, you're shy. You don't want to upset the other person. And that is something where culturally, it's also, it's one of the most important points. And that's where you have to keep in mind as well how you deal with people. So for example, if you're working in a business setting, they don't like to be publicly humiliated. So if you have a problem with one of your staff, naturally, what you learn in the West, you nip the bud right there and you just tell them as it is. But here in Thailand, because of the Grengjai and the cultural, the way you're meant to deal with this is remove yourself and the staff who you want to speak from that situation and speak to them in private and not in front of the group. Because once you do it in front of the group, they lose face. And normally they leave the day after. So those are those cultural nuances that you have to get used to. And
I mean, again, you hit a nail on the head. It's my experience that the loss of face is the key thing to bear in mind in any transaction, whether you're dealing with somebody in a supermarket or somebody you bumped into on the street accidentally, or especially authority with the, or say an accident. Never, ever lose your temper. Always be polite. Always be respectful, and never try and put somebody in a situation where, even if it's completely justifiable, never put them in a situation where they will lose face, because then it will just it'll go like concrete. You'll never get anywhere. Do you agree with that?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And that's where you have to, as well, have good human skills. So that's where it always falls back on. It's important to know the cultures, because once you know it and understand it, it's easier to adapt.
So what's a single piece of advice you would give somebody to deal with this cultural difference? What would it be? In one sentence, I would say, so that they would avoid as many problems as possible, what would you say? Always
remember you're not at home.
Okay.
At home being where you're from.
Yeah.
And that you're actually on someone's doorstep. So it's important for us to adapt and match ourselves to their lifestyle.
Yeah, I think what you're saying in essence, because it's something that's been running through a lot of these conversations. It comes back in whether it's to do with business or just relationships or just dealing with the ties in general, is the word respect. Respect is key to everything. If you always remain respectful, even if you're quite angry, but if you remain respectful, life will work out here much better for you. Do you agree with that?
Exactly. And that, can be challenging, but you can do it. You
Yeah.
can do it. That's why it's great that Thailand's a Buddhist country. It really teaches you patience.
Yes, it's good like that.
Yeah.
Anything else you might want to talk about? Got any other experiences that you want to share?
I would say those are probably for me the two main points that I would say for anyone considering moving here or coming here is just adapt yourself to the road and match yourself to the culture.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came here and you're obviously an entrepreneur, and I know that you say you're currently running a chicken farm. Was that your first venture, or what else? What's your thoughts on entrepreneurial?
So I've done a few businesses here. Obviously, most of them failed. So far, our most successful one has been our chicken farm. And what I came to find here as well, speaking to other entrepreneurs and other producers of products, was the hardest part for one is, let's say, working with the bigger companies here. Because, for example, if you're producing products, naturally, we fell into the same thing. We got to contact the hotels. We got to contact the big chains. And doing this as a small producer gets extremely challenging. I understand that they're running a business, but then as a small producer, the challenge that we all have is the price ranges, where you price your products. And that's where it gets hard, because working with the bigger companies, they obviously want the best price. So they're trying to squeeze you down. And that's where it gets a bit challenging and disheartening as well, because going into it, you thought, oh, wow, the stories that those businesses are talking about, that matches perfectly with what we're trying to sell. But then when it comes down to the negotiations and talk, you find out it's not necessarily aligned what they were talking about and their expectations.
And how easy did you find it to actually find somebody to talk to? Or did you find that it took you a long time to work your way up the management chain to get to somebody that could make a decision? Or did you find that easy?
It was a bit easier in our sense for us, because my wife, she used to work in the hotels. So she kind of understood who to contact and how to navigate around there. So that helped us a lot, because at least we could get in touch with the decision maker. Because at the end of the day, if you can't get in touch with them, it gets even harder. But even with that, it's still extremely challenging, because they still have to run it through the whole corporate process. And that's where, as a small producer, it's extremely challenging. And it also depends on the products that you're trying to bring. Because what we're doing in terms of agriculture for the South, it's quite a novelty. So on our end, it comes with a lot of storytelling, and reinforcing that, hey, what we're selling is actually right in line with what you guys are looking for. But yeah, trying this for a couple of years, we've learned you have to adapt and find your other channels of income. Because if you're just focusing on one, it's going to be hard.
It's been my experience trying to do business with the larger organizations that it's difficult to get in. There'll be pre-existing relationships, whether that's based on friendship, family, long-term relationships, whatever. It's very difficult to get in. And also, if you're bringing in a new concept, that's difficult to find anybody who's prepared to say yes to a new idea without some encouragement.
Yes.
If you know what I mean.
Yes, it is. And I mean, them engaging with you already, taking in what you're saying is already a step forward. So actually, if you can just get your foot through the door, it's already a big help. But nonetheless, you still have to be persistent. You have to grind at it.
So you had a slight edge with the hotel scene, with your wife knowing the infrastructure. What about other businesses? Have you used any sort of strategies to help you get through the doors of other places?
Strategies, not really. Just go head on. That's all you can do, is just go and
actually physically go and knock on doors and
yes.
Okay,
so we've done that quite a bit as well when you're starting on, especially for a farm. We're quite lucky right now that a lot of the narrative is around sustainability. So that's the nice thing. We have a lot of different types of markets happening around Phuket.
Yeah. I'm always interested in people's businesses and where they struggle, and if there's any sort of creative
There is a need. Like,
I'm sure that there is a need, but
Geelong, we sold out.
you can't grow your business going around in a van delivering dropping
No, of
off
course
6
not.
eggs and
Of
12
course
eggs and
not.
stuff.
Of course not.
It needs to be scalable.
Yep.
And then, so if I were you, I mean, if you do Villa Market, what about Tops? It's much more that sort of Waitrosey type.
We can, but Villa specifically wants to work with us exclusively because they were looking for small farmers like us producing organic
Yeah,
products.
that's fine. That's fine.
So
But
we can't list at Tops under our brand because we're working solely with Villa on the eggs.
make another brand.
I know, but we don't have enough eggs right now. At 1,000 chickens, we're still way behind.
A Villa Market selling all your eggs.
Yeah,
They sell.
yeah.
Well, that's not a problem.
No, we're sold out, and we're also listed in Bangkok. So we do send a portion to Bangkok. We sell here and to restaurants. So
Oh, so
right now,
you have a good problem then. It's basically
Exactly.
your demand outstrips your supply.
exactly,
Buy some more chickens.
exactly. That's why we're looking for investors. But the opportunity for agriculture in Thailand is huge because everything in agriculture actually happens in and around Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Isan area. Further south you go, the less there is for agriculture. So already just in terms of product logistics, it's a huge distance that they have to cover, which is why we're like, shit, let's start it here. Try something around here because we know the demand is here and also the buying power is here. So it's very possible, and we know also from seeing online and seeing what the people tell us, they say right away, the moment they eat our eggs, they can taste it's different. It's not like your conventional mass-produced egg.
If you enjoyed that, do like and subscribe to the channel. It will help us grow.